Hi and welcome to another tutorial, part of this series where we're building an e-commerce website with Django. If you'd like to follow along, just go to our Django e-commerce GitHub repository. The link is in the description of this video. You can just clone or download this to get started. Before we get into this, we just released our new course where we build a software as a service with the Django REST framework and React. We cover everything from scratch all the way to deploying. So if you're interested in more advanced and in-depth Django courses, then head over to our website, justdjango.com. The link is in the description of this video, and otherwise enjoy this one. Alright, so in this one, we are going to start working with a default setting for our shipping and billing addresses. So this will basically allow you to click a checkbox, which can then save your current billing information that you've entered into the form as your default billing address, which you can then reuse in further checkout processes. And the same thing for the shipping address. Now I'm just going to go and log in so we can see what we're actually talking about. And let's just go and add something into the cart and proceed to checkout. And so right now, this is the checkout form. We have some options that we can fill in for the address, and then we can click here to say that the shipping address is the same as the billing address. Now we're going to change the way that this looks a little bit and just add like a heading here that says that this is the shipping address part, and then we'll have the billing address part, and add in some extra checkboxes that can allow you to basically specify whether you want to use them as the same address or you want to reuse old addresses, so things like that. So that's what we're going to do. So let's just go and get the code here. So we'll go into core, into views, and let's just install that. And so we want to go here to the checkout view, and here inside the post request we had a to-do, which was to add some functionality for what we're talking about right now, which is the whole same shipping address and saving this information. But we're going to change the way that this works in the models. So a lot of this is going to change. So let's just open up the models here as well. And we'll just go here to the address. And let's just see here, this is the billing address. So right now we only have one kind of address, which is the billing address. But what we're going to do is change this to be just a generic address. And then we will add a type of address here as one of the fields. So we'll say this is the address type and say this is a character field. And I'll say that the maximum length is 1. And then we can add choices, which can just be another tuple up top here. And I'm just going to copy and paste this like that. And we'll just call this the address choices. Then this is either going to be billing or shipping, so we can just get rid of that last one, and we'll call this the shipping, and we'll call this billing. So then we can take those and just come down and specify those as the choices over here. Cool, so now we have that. We're just going to add one more field, and this is default, and this is going to be a Boolean field. So we'll set default equal to false so that it's not a default address. Basically what we'll do with this field is every time you say use this as my default billing address or use this as my default shipping address, we'll then just grab the address you just created and then set default to be true, which you can then select in further purchases. So that's what this field is going to allow us to do. But now that we've changed the address, we're going to need to change this here in our order as well, because we have a foreign key to that model already. So I'm going to change this to be called address, and then we can actually just copy the entire thing, and we'll call this one the shipping address. So let's just change one of them here. But because the foreign key is on the same model, we're going to need to give them a related name. So this one can be called the shipping address, just like this. And then the same concept here for the billing address. Cool, so now let's try and make migrations with that. And now we're getting an import error in our views. So let's just go here to the top, line 11. So this is no longer billing address, and I'm just going to search for all of those billing addresses, and there's only one other which is there. So we can change this to be called address. And then for this one here, we'll also call this one address. And when we create a billing address, we'll just need to come here and specify that the address type is equal to B for billing. So let's try and make migrations again, and there we go. Now we can migrate. And now we're getting an integrity error. So the easiest way to solve this is just for us to go and delete those migrations. So I'm going to delete that entire folder and then delete the database as well. Then we can say manage.py make migrations just for the core app. And then we can say migrate. Okay. I'll also create a new super user, and then we can run the server. Cool, then let's go into the admin and we'll just import that model. So address, and here where we have billing address, we are also going to add in the shipping address. So just specify that here. And then we'll also add it in over here in the list display links. Okay, then we can just copy this and register the address model. And if we just take a look here again, we're just going to copy all these fields so that we can specify them in a custom admin model. So we'll come here, we'll say this is the address admin, which inherits from the admin.model admin. Then we'll just say list display is all of these fields. Okay, then we can also add in the list filter, and we can filter by the country. We can filter if it's a default address, and we can filter by the address type. And we'll probably want to put country at the end there because it's quite a long list. So let's just move it there. Then we have the search fields, and we're going to want to search by user, and we could add all of these fields in as well. So let's just add them in here. So street address, the apartment address, and we could also search by zip as well. Okay, there we go. Then we can just take that and make sure that we register the admin with that model. Cool, so if we go into the admin, and we're going to need to log in with our new super user. There we go, and we can also come here and change the class meta. So let's just add class meta, and we'll just say verbose name plural equals to addresses. Okay, then let's just refresh here. And there we go, that looks better. So we can come in here and we can add an address for user. And we're also going to need to change the form now, because if we come here to the checkout form, you can see that this is all based on having one type of address, which is the billing address. So basically what we want to do is duplicate all of these fields, because our form is now going to have a billing address and a shipping address. So to make this easier, instead of outputting all of these fields over here, we're just going to do it in plain HTML. So let's just keep this open and go into templates, and we can go into checkout.html. And just here above the address, I'm going to add an h3 tag, and we can just say that this is the shipping address that we'll take in first. And then what I'm going to do is wrap all of these fields except for one of the last ones, and we'll just wrap it all inside a div. So all of this all the way here to this HR, I'm just going to tab that in, close that off in a div, and I'm going to give it a class name, and we'll just say that this class is the hideable shipping form. This is just so that we can get hold of it to toggle the display from being displayed to not being displayed, depending on whether we click a checkbox. And then I'm going to basically copy all of this. So everything up till beneath this HR, or just above the HR. I'm going to then paste it all again, except this one is now the billing address. So if we were to come back here and refresh this, we're getting redirected too many times. So let's just go back here. And what I'm going to do is just come here and add in a new item just so we can add something to the cart. Cool, so now we have an item and there it is. So we can go and visit it, add to cart. Here it is, and let's proceed to checkout. Cool, so now we have shipping address, billing address, and we've got the payment process over here. So we can actually add that as a heading there as well. So if we just come down here after the HR tag, what I'm actually going to do is move the div to not include that HR. And I'll do the same thing with this wrapping div over there. So now if we come back here, this is continue to checkout, and here's our radio options for the payment option. So here I'll just add another H3 and we can just say this is payment option. So now if we take a look, and there we go. And we'll fix the styling as we go along. But for now, let's just go back here into the form and let's just get all of these placeholders and move them over as inputs here in the form, because right now we're outputting these form fields dynamically. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of that, and then we can come here and specify an input. I'll say that the type is text. We can say that the placeholder is equal to this value here. So I'll just copy and paste that in there. We can say that the ID is going to equal to the shipping address. And we can say that the name is also the shipping address. And then we can say that the class is form control. Then we just make sure that this ID is the same as that ID. And then we'll basically do the exact same thing here. So we'll just get rid of that output there. And I'm just going to call this shipping address 2, and then get rid of all of that and change that as well. And then the placeholder can be what the placeholder is over here. So apartment or suite. Okay. Then the form.country, we're going to output the way it is because that's coming from our Django countries package. So we'll leave it as it is, but we can actually get rid of the widgets here now. So we'll just get rid of all of that. And then I'm going to add in here required equals false. And even though it is, we'll handle whether or not we got it in the view. And then I'm going to change the names of those as well. So the first one is the shipping address, then it's shipping address 2. Country will change to shipping country. And then for the zip, we'll change this to be shipping zip as well. And same thing, I'm going to get rid of all of those and just add required equals false. Then shipping zip, we can come down, and here instead of this form.zip being outputted, I'll copy that and paste that here. Then we can say that this placeholder is, let's just say zip code, and then shipping zip we'll copy and paste as the ID and the name, and there we go. Then I'll also change the for to be shipping zip as well. So if we take a look, we just have that country not showing up. So let's just come back here, copy shipping country, come back here, and this is form.shipping country. Then if we come back and refresh this, there we go. And I'll just fix some of the spacing here. And so we can see that this hideable div is wrapping all of that over there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut both of these out and I'm going to move them inside there as well. And then let's just tab that like this. Then I'm going to get rid of all these if statements inside these inputs for the checkboxes. We can keep this one as same billing address. And I'm just going to change the ID to be same billing address and same billing address. And we can say here, this is billing address is the same as my shipping address. So like this. So that's going to be the first checkbox. Then the second checkbox is going to be saving this as the default shipping address. So we can just come here and change this text and say save as default shipping address. And then the name I'm going to say as set default shipping. And we can then just copy and paste this everywhere it needs to be. Okay, now let's go and refresh here. Cool, so that's looking much better. Then there's one more checkbox we want to add here, which is to say use the default billing address, and then we could put some text that's referencing your current default billing address. So I'm basically just going to copy this, come outside the hideable div, and we'll put this one here, and then say, instead of save as, this will be use default shipping address. And here we could just put, let's say, some address like this. And instead of set default, it will be use default. And make sure we use that everywhere as well. So if we come back, the idea here is that if we select to use the default shipping address, then all of this will be hidden. But that's based on a toggle. So if you toggle this, all of this will hide or show, which we'll just do with jQuery. And we can also come back here into the form and make sure that this country field has required equal false as well, in the case that you use a default address. Then we can come back here and basically do the exact same thing for the billing address. So what I'm going to do is also make sure these labels are correct. So let's just grab these here, same billing address. So same billing address. And this should actually be same shipping address. And so should these. Then we have set default shipping. So I'll just paste that one here. And this is also going to be a Boolean field. And then the last one here is use default shipping. Then we can get rid of that save info there. And all of these fields that we used for the shipping form, we can come here and paste them all again and just call all of these the billing equivalent. So like this. And we can actually just cut these three out and move them below. So like this. And just like we'll have set default shipping and use default shipping, we're going to have the exact same thing for the billing equivalent. So this will be set default billing and set default or use default billing. So just like this. And then we can come back here, go to the billing address, and I'm just going to copy all of those inputs that we just created here into the billing address form. Okay, there we go. So now we have the billing address, exact same thing as the shipping address. So we have address 1 and we have address 2. Then we have billing country and we have billing zip. And instead of having two checkboxes here to where one of them is this billing address is the same as my shipping address, we wouldn't have that again. So all we have here is set default billing, and then we'll handle use default billing as well. So we can actually just copy this here and right before the HR. And we can actually just get rid of that one there. Then instead of use default shipping, this would be use default billing. And we can just do the same thing for over here and add it in like that. And there we go. So now we have the billing address form, save as default billing address, and use default billing address. And now we just want to make sure that these checkboxes are only being displayed if we actually have a default billing address or a default shipping address. So let's go here into the view, and I'm going to get rid of all of that there. And let's just go here into the get request, and we'll actually need to import the address, which we do over there. And so here we're going to need to get some query sets. So right after the context, we can update the context if we have a default shipping address. So what we can do is say the shipping address query set equals to the address where we will filter it based on the current user. And let's just put this on a new line. Then we will say that the address type is going to be billing, or rather shipping in this case. And we're going to say that default equals to true, so that we get the default address. And then we can just say if shipping address query set exists, then we will say the context dot update, and here we'll say default shipping address is that shipping address first item. And then we can copy this and we'll do the exact same thing for the billing address. So let's just rename this billing address and change this to B. Then if that query set exists, we will say that the default billing address is equal to billing address query set of 0. Cool. Then we can come in here, and for this one, for the billing address, we can just say if, and let's just go and get that value there. So if default billing address is being passed into the context, then we will actually render this. And here we can just get rid of that and actually output their default address. So here we can say default billing address dot address, and then we can say truncate characters to, let's say, 10. And then we can copy that and come back up here for the shipping address and say if use, or if there's a default shipping address, then we will output it like that, and do the exact same thing over here. So if default shipping address, then we'll say end if, come back, and let's just see name request is not defined. So if we go back here, this is self.request.user, and just add it in over there. Okay. And refresh this. Cool. So now those checkboxes will only output if we actually have a default. And now we need to work on the logic of what actually happens when we submit in the post request. So let's just come back down here, and we can actually close some of these files off. So the logic here is first to check if we are using the default shipping address. So that means we're going to get the value from the cleaned data in the form. If that value is true, then we will use the default address. If it's false, then that means that we were expected to enter some information in the form. So let's just come here and say use default shipping equals to, and we'll just copy all of that there and grab that value from the clean data. So if, and we can actually just go here, if that value is true, then I'm going to say print using the default shipping address. And just like we did over here, I'm going to copy that query set and I'll paste that all over here. And I'm just going to call it the address query set for short. So what we want to do is first check if this user actually has a default shipping address, because if they don't, then we're going to need to redirect back and display some sort of message. So we'll just say if it exists, then we'll say that the shipping address equals to that address query set, the first value inside it. And then we can say else messages.info, and we'll pass self.request and say no default shipping address available. And we can just go and copy one of these redirects here, back to the checkout page. So just like this. So we're storing it in this shipping address variable, which we will either get from this condition, and then we can just go down and say else. Then we can just say print user is entering a new shipping address. And we'll do the exact same thing where we assign this variable to be the address over here, which is going to be received or created in this exact same way that we have been doing previously. So I'm just going to tab all of that inside, and we'll just make sure we label everything appropriately. So let's actually just go back here to the form, and we'll say that the shipping address equals to that, shipping address 2 equals to this, and then we have shipping country equals to that value, and we have shipping zip equals to that. Then the payment option, I'm just going to come and paste over there because we don't need that for now. So this is the shipping address, which I'm going to rename. I'm going to change this to be shipping, and then we will pass in all of these values. And just make sure we save the shipping address there. And then we can say order.shippingaddress equals to that. And what I'm going to do is do it outside of the else statement, so that either way we are storing it as the shipping address received from here or as the new one over here. And I'll actually just change this label to be shipping address 1, so we don't get any kind of conflict with variable names. Cool. So now we are saving the shipping address onto the order. And at this point, what we want to do is check if we are setting this current shipping address that we just created to be the new default. So what I'm going to do is say set default shipping equals to, and we will just copy all of that there and get the value from that form and just say if set default shipping is true, then we just want to take that shipping address and we're just going to say dot default equals true, and then just say dot save. So now we've saved it as a default shipping address, so that next time we will be able to filter for it and display that to the user. And basically all of this logic that we just did over here for the shipping address, this is what we want to do, well, everything from here. This is what we want to do for the billing address as well. But inside here in the else statement, if we are creating a new address, we're going to want to validate these values over here, because we've gone here in the form and specified that they are not required. And that could lead to some issues where users could submit empty strings, and we obviously don't want that. So we can just come up here above the class and just define a method that can help us with this. So I'll just say this is, let's say, is valid form, and we'll just say that it takes in a list of values, and we can say for field in values, then we can check if that field is equal to an empty string, and above this for loop we could have a total value which is valid and say that it initially is valid, but the moment we get an empty string we set it to be invalid. So we'll just say if field equals an empty string, then we will say valid equals to false. And then here just say return valid. And then here we can just take that is valid form, and we'll come here right above the values here, or just after we receive it, but below and just above the shipping address where we create it. So we'll say if is valid form, and here we'll just pass in a list of values. So the ones that are required, which would be the shipping address 1, the shipping country, and the shipping zip. So if all of those values are valid, then we can just tab that in, so to do all of that logic. And otherwise we can then just say messages.info of self.request, and we'll just say, please fill in the required shipping address fields. And then we can just take all of that and put that inside the if statement as well. So just tab this in. And there we go. Then what I'm going to do is basically copy all of this, and we can then come below it and we'll just paste it all there and do the exact same thing for use default billing. So we'll say if use default billing is true, then we'll say using the default billing address, and we'll filter for billing addresses. If the address exists, then we will create a billing address variable, which is the first item in the query set. We'll say no default billing address is available otherwise. And here we'll say user is entering a new billing address, and we'll just change the values inside here. And then we can just take all of these and make sure that we pass them into the new address. So we'll just paste them all here. And make sure that this is a billing type address, and we will label it as well and pass in all of the values into the isValidForm check. Then we can say order.billing address equals to that billing address and save it. And actually we will need to save it on this condition as well. So let's just add it over there, and then we'll do the same thing that we did for the shipping address over here in this condition as well. There we go. So now let's just come back down and we'll do the same thing here. Use default billing or set default billing. So just add it in there. So if that value is true, then we'll say that the billing address default is equal to true. We'll say please fill in the required billing address fields. And then there's just one more thing that we need to add, which is if we are using the same billing address as shipping address. So that's going to be something that we need to check here at the beginning. So over here, so we can just come and grab that value. So same billing address equals to, and just copy all of this. So what we should actually do first is check if that value is true. So we'll say if same billing address, then what I'm going to do is set the billing address equal to the shipping address, but I'm going to clone it. So I'm going to say that the primary key equals none, and then we can say .save so that it creates a new address. And then we can say that the billing address address type equals to a billing address. And then we will say .save and then save it onto the order. So if this condition is true, we will do all of that. Otherwise, we check if we're using the default billing address. And otherwise, as the last condition, we're assuming that the user is entering form data. So after this last else statement, we get the payment option and do the exact same thing as usual. So if we check here, the server is still running. So we can come back here and refresh this. And let's just also go back here and go to addresses. So we don't have any right now. So let's enter some information. And I'm going to say save as default. Then we can enter some other information in here. And I'm going to say save as default as well. And we'll say Stripe, continue to checkout. And if we come back here and refresh this, now we have two default addresses. One is billing, one is shipping. Cool, now let's go back. And I'm just refreshing this. And what I'm going to do is say use default shipping address. And we're not getting it displayed there. Let's just see why that is. So street address is actually the field we need to output. So let's just come here and say this is street address. Then we can copy that and bring it to the billing address as well. So if we refresh this, now we have that default street address showing there as an indication. So if we select both of those and then select Stripe and continue, that went through. So let's also go back here to the order, and we'll just come here and say that there is no relationship to a shipping and billing address. And let's see, a reference code is required. So what I'm going to do is go back here to the model so we can change that. And this is on the order. And here I'll just add blank and null are true for this field. And then we can just make migrations and then migrate and then run the server. So let's come back and refresh this, click continue. Okay, so now we don't have a shipping or billing address, so we can test this again. So let's go back. And so we're using default shipping, using default billing, click continue, go back, refresh this, and there we go. So now we have the shipping address and the billing address being used. And lastly, let's go and test another case. So just refresh there, and let's go and delete those addresses as well. So just delete those. And what we're going to do is say billing address is the same as my shipping address. So let's just add information there and select Stripe, continue. Okay, let's come back and refresh this. So now we have billing and we have shipping, exact same information. And if we go back and go to the order, then it's linking that same one as well. So this seems to be working so far. What we can do now is just add in a little bit of jQuery to say that when we select the use default address, that it then toggles this display. So let's go back here and we can go into checkout and just come all the way to the bottom. And let's also open up base.html and just see here that we have the script being included. So what I'm going to do is add another block here, and we can just call this the extra scripts. And then we can say end block extra scripts. Then we can copy that entire block there. And right here after content, we'll add in our new script over here. So let's just open up a script tag. And if we just take a look here at the classes we've added. So we have here hideable shipping form, which I should actually call hideable billing form, seeing as this is for the billing address. And then we have the same thing here, which is hideable shipping form. So I'm going to copy both of these two. And then here we can just create some variables. And we're just going to use jQuery and access it with those classes. So just paste those values there. And then we're also going to need the checkboxes. So the first one being this one here. So having the name of use default shipping and an ID of use default shipping. And then the other one is the shipping one or billing one. So here we'll say variable use default shipping equals to, and we can just say document dot query selector, and we can just open up the input tag and say where the name is equal to use default shipping, and then this one will be use default billing, and change the name in there. And all we need to do here is just say if use default shipping is changed, which we can handle with an event listener. So we can just say add event listener and listen for the change event. Then we can create a function as a callback, and we'll just say if this dot checked, which is a property on the checkbox HTML tag. So if it is checked, then we're going to say hideable shipping form dot hide, which is that jQuery method. And then we can say otherwise hideable shipping form dot show. And we can call these methods because we're accessing these variables with the jQuery selector. So I can just copy this entire script tag there, and we'll say that this is for the use default billing, and then say hideable billing form dot hide or show. So now if we come back and refresh this, we'll just go back here into the admin and let's just go to those addresses, and then we can just say that they are default, and this one is also default. Refresh this. So if I select use default, you can see it toggled that form, and that way we at least get this indication that we don't need to fill in any of the other form fields if we do select this. And this is then a lot better than just leaving it open. So at least providing some information to the user. Click continue, and it takes you to this page where we've seen the payment process does work. So that's all we wanted to handle in this one, which was just improving this checkout process of adding a billing address and a shipping address. So now we can at least control that information much better and store it more accurately, and also provide a better way of our users actually entering that information by providing this default option. And also the concept of billing address is the same as my shipping address. And we could actually do the exact same thing for that toggle. So if you toggled this one, it could either pre-populate this form or cause a drop down where it hides or shows it. But now that you've seen how we can do it with this toggle example, you can try and implement this one yourself. So we're just going to leave it at this. So if you enjoyed this video, then leave a comment down below and let us know what you thought. And otherwise, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.